Hello and welcome to Let's Make Tracks. In this video I'm going to be taking A4 William Whitelaw and transforming it into Union of South Africa. But before we get into how I did it, first I need to tell you a tale of caution.
The first stages of the renumbering all went according to plan, with one exception. I took a little bit of the lining when removing the original number, but it was hard to see from a distance, so I made peace with this quite easily. So it was time to seal everything in with matte spray varnish. Unfortunately, this is where the trouble began. Now, it says on the can to shake for a good 5 minutes. I did not. I sprayed a little bit on the mat just to prime my nozzle, and this will be important in a minute. And then I went on to spray the decals, and after a few minutes, to my horror, it looked like someone had sneezed all over my cabside, and panic mode just set in. My first instinct was to get a bit of paint thinner on the paintbrush and try and get this varnish off, obviously being careful with the decals underneath. This, as much as it removed the sneeze appearance, left some quite horrible streak marks. So after doing a little bit of research, I decided the best course of action at this point would be to put a gloss varnish, or the closest I had anyway, on top of the affected area, and this was supposed to fill in the gaps and the ridges and make it smooth again. To some extent it worked, but on the last pass with the brush, the worst possible thing that could have happened happened. Not only did some of the transfers lift, but they tore and balled up, and it was just ruined. So I cleaned off the cabside, unfortunately taking the cab lining with it, and with one last final kick in the teeth, I managed to snap off the handrail. And at that point, I just downed tools and went to bed. So the first thing to get sorted is that handrail. A little drop of Gorilla Glue gel on the end of a cocktail stick and gently put it back in position, and this does the job just fine. Now when it comes to the cabside lining, I have to do it in N scale because it's the closest scale available. So the idea is to use the cabside pieces as is, divide them into 4 quarters, and then to use some of the strips from over here to extend the square and make it fit. To make my life a little easier this time, I've decided to take the tender off, just so I haven't got to worry about that flapping around. So you just detach it by unscrewing preferably the locomotive screw, and then just pulling out this pin, but do be careful, it's a bit snug in there. I'm just going to mark off what side is what, so I actually put it back in the right way around when I'm done. So apprehensively, with my destroyed confidence, we get on with the repair. So stage 1, dissect the correct Cabside decal into 4/4. So there is a left and a right side, so just got to make sure I pick the right one. So now it's just a case of delicately reassembling the decal with its extended pieces. So I'm using the washout plug as a anchor point because I know the lining goes directly through the plug. So I'm going to use this corner as my guide for spacing and everything else for the rest of the lining. So delicately rinse and repeat, get the corners on, fill in the gaps with the straight lining, and Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, and we've returned to our default position before everything went sideways. And I believe Sir Nigel Gresley has smiled down upon us himself. Thank God that's over. So now we're back on track. I'll show you how I did it this time round. So sticking with the method of using enamel thinners, I'm going to use these cotton buds with the pointy tip on the end, and I'm just going to get in a very light layer of enamel thinners and very carefully just stick to the area I want to remove. So after letting that soak for a few minutes, I go back with my fingernail and I just scratch up and down, and after a little while, to and fro in, the numbers give up the ghost. Being very careful obviously of the lining because I don't want to repeat the damage from the other side, but this gets off the numbers quite well. Next time I will probably use a different technique just to see which is better, really, because I know there's many ways of taking off numbers. Now when it comes to the transfers, originally I had found these transfers from Railtech in TT120 scale. Unfortunately I did get them in the wrong size. I got the numbers in the 8-inch version, which were unfortunately too small and about the same size as N-gauge transfers for the same BR Eastern Region type. So I have reordered TT120 transfers in the 10-inch version, and these seem to be a better match. Height-wise, they seem like they're pretty good. The only issue I have is that maybe the distancing is a little too close. So I can either put them on as is or separate the numbers individually to make it match what's here. I'll have to experiment with that at a later date. Because I've already done the one side in N-gauge with my replacement that I got from Fox, I'm going to stick with the N just so both sides match. So the time has come to apply the transfers to the other side. Hopefully this will go better than the first. So I'm using Microsole and Microset to attach the decals. The easiest way to remember which one goes first and second is they have these numbers hidden on the side, which I only found out about the other week. Makes life a bit easy. So we'll start off with number 1, blue, Microsole, and we'll just damp the area. While that's happening, just pop the transfer in some warm water using tweezers. It'd be preferable if you had the auto locking tweezers, but I'm cheating. I'm going to just use a pinch here and that'll hold that. So when you're ready, just gently guide the transfer onto the model, onto a tiny little puddle of Microsole that we've already placed down. Pop it in position and then just gently dab with the cotton bud to try and get it to stick to position. Once it's fairly in place, just take the cotton bud and then just gently press down and roll from your anchor point away. This will get air bubbles and any moisture out from under the transfer and hopefully you'll have a nice solid surface for it to cling to. So now that's on there, we bring out the microsole, the red one, number 2, and just put a gentle thin layer across the top, being very careful not to shift the decal. Now what this stuff does, it softens the transfer, so it gives that painted on appearance. So if there's any ridges and bumps where the transfer would normally want to lay flat like a tile, this stuff softens it so it goes into all the ridges. So in this particular instance, it might not matter too much about it going into ridges, but it says it gives that painted on appearance, which is obviously what I'm trying to go for. So now that that's on there, I'm literally going to walk away and leave it to dry. I am not going to touch it until probably tomorrow. So it's finally time to officially change the name of the locomotive from William Whitelaw to Union of South Africa. So obviously the first thing to do is to remove the nameplate. These are super glued on and separately fitted, so being very careful not to chip the green paint as I peel this off. So the new nameplates are from SilverTay models. These things are fantastic. You just need to separate it from the sprue. You've got a nice little cutout section here, so it's fairly easy to do. I would recommend cutting this on a flat surface because these bend quite easily. Now my final mistake in this build was choosing to use super glue. In this particular case, Gorilla Super Glue Gel. As much as the gel gives me a little bit of playtime, I still would not recommend using super glue, even though that I've done, because super glue can be very unforgiving if you get it wrong, which I will show you in just a minute. A quick check just to make sure I've got the crests the right way round, and we begin. So just a little dab of glue on the area I want the plaque, and then gently apply it. Although all things considered, I did need way more playtime than this glue was going to allow me. As you can see with the light and the glare on model, the glue got a little bit further than I wanted it to, which I had to go back with a bit of isopropyl alcohol later to try and remove. I think my biggest issue at this point in the build was I'd already decided that this model was going to be renamed again at a later date, so I probably got a bit complacent here, so this probably isn't my best work. But obviously the crest and the nameplate on this side didn't go on perfectly. I had to try and clean up some of the super glue with IPA, and the area got a little bit scratched, so I went over it with a little bit of paint I had. Unfortunately, it was Southern Railway olive green and not BR Brunswick, so there's a little bit of a difference. Then to seal everything in at once, I gave all the model a coat of the Humbrol satin varnish, seeing as this had done me quite well on the other side after the first disaster. So obviously this model is not the pristine finished product that I wanted, but I think it is close enough, and it will definitely do until I get round to attempt number 2 when I've got a bit more confidence.